Hi everybody, it's me, Beth Maitland at Drama Queen Bee Quilt Studio. And we're in the studio and I've got beautiful pink and green, lovely romantic quilt on the rack. So we're doing fabulous feathers. We're doing a collection, a festival of feathers today. And so many of you have requested more videos of me actually long arming. So I did a section of sashing in a technique that involves not making the spine in advance and then not doing one side all the way up the spine and then the other from the beginning, but actually building on both sides of the spine with each pass. And so I thought I would just play that in a few minutes and just talk over it, and we'll continue our discussion while I'm doing some feathers on the long arm. But today's topic, I think, was a little subject that my daughter and I discussed over coffee. She's getting to be quite a good quilter in terms of piecing, and she asked me if she would be able to spend more time on the long armor and what kind of skills she thinks that she needs to build to be able to sell her quilts as a little side business. And so in thinking about that, we had a long and interesting conversation about how you, turn something that is your avocation, a love, a beloved hobby or art form that you love to do and that you've spent years developing. Perhaps you've invested thousands of dollars in tools and supplies, and over time you'd like to create a business. Well, this is more a philosophical discussion, not necessarily a how-to, because I have not seen anybody really develop this without a huge investment, perhaps getting a brick and mortar store and an online presence that is way larger than I'm interested in investing in. I don't mean financially, I mean with time and effort and intent at this late stage in my career. But it changes things, and I wanted to talk to you about that today because we had a really interesting philosophical discussion over coffee. How is it changed for me that from the time I was 10 or 12, I was sewing. By the time I was 13, I was sewing costumes for a local theater group. And then in high school, I was on my costume crew for my entire, I went to what you might have at that time called a fine arts school. And we did six plays a year, 3 in repertory in the spring, and one large musical each year, as well as a summer play. We did classics in the fall, and it depended on, there might even actually be squeezed in another classical, like a Shakespeare play or something a little bit more traditional. And then the repertory, we did 3 plays with 2 casts and rotated casts, and it gave everybody a chance to play a role, and it gave everybody a chance to contribute. So I was very, very fortunate to go to a really beautiful, with a lovely theater and a lovely, very well equipped backstage and shop and costume storage, and I was on costume crews for years. Then in college, I sang with the Lyric Opera Company for a couple of years, and did some of my own costuming for that too. So how did I turn that into quilting, and how did that eventually become a little side job that I do? And does it affect, on the philosophical level, my love of quilting when I have to do it for other people? And basically what it comes down to is this: if I'm allowed to create my art form and build a quilt from whatever appeals to me or speaks to me and make that from start to finish and sell it, that gives me a lot of satisfaction. That somebody approves of my efforts enough to want that particular style or set of fabrics or quilting designs or whatever. If, however, I have to build a project from the ground up based on someone else's protocols, with a collaboration, it's one thing, and left to my own devices with their colorway and their style, that's fun. But on the other hand, it is no longer a creative challenge when it is micromanaged by the client. But how is that fair? A client should be able to give you their feedback and get exactly what they want, from any artist doing a commission. So I have just determined that I'm not at liberty with my time and the flexibility of my life and my schedule to be micromanaged that much. So that didn't work out for me doing commissions quilts. Unless I was given free reign with just a broad spectrum of like a colorway and a style, unless I was given free reign, in that case, it was like a creative challenge and I loved it. But if I am micromanaged by a client, I don't love it. So I've stopped doing commission quilts for the most part. Maybe occasionally I'll do one for a friend, or I'm doing one for my sister right now. So that's a contradiction, I guess. But on the other hand, selling my art is a lot of fun and a really rewarding sort of a stamp of approval or seal of approval from a broader spectrum, which would be the client or the purchaser. However, I only have so much time and so much ability to complete any number of quilts. Then we got onto the topic of charging by the hour. And how is it possible for you to actually make a working wage as an artisan, as a person who hand knits or hand crochets or creates wall hangings or art projects, quilting, obviously, fiber arts, art quilts? How is it that you can price your things in such a way as to make a working wage? And that led us to platforms, a little investigation into how do you sell those things. I'm lucky because I have a built-in fan base from being a celebrity in another area. And so that has worked in some ways to my benefit, because many people ask me, do you have anything that I could buy? I want something that you have made. It's not necessarily even about whether they love the colors or love the style. It's more about I made it. So I'm kind of not a typical example of selling in the workplace. When you need a platform through which to sell your products, I had an Etsy shop for a long time, and there are various other places that are public platforms online where you can use that as a listing site to sell your art. What I have found, and it's the free enterprise system, so it makes perfect sense, it's just a disappointment, is that every place I have joined as a clearinghouse to sell my art, in a very short amount of time, their fees to list, their fees to sell a percentage when you sell something, and then they develop their own checkout system, like their version of PayPal or the like. And through their checkout system, they're getting a commission there too. So there's 3 places where they make money on your efforts. And yes, they're paying for the platform and the bandwidth and all of that, but you're paying listing fees, you're paying sellers fees, and you're paying checkout fees. So there's 3 places where an artist is not allowed to make a profit if you're charging your customers a reasonable amount of money for the product they're buying. The other part of it is how expensive is it to make a quilt? And here's where it gets kind of tricky. I don't think a layperson who doesn't quilt or sew for a hobby or for fun can even possibly imagine how expensive it is to build a quilt, what you need in supplies. And never mind the amount of time it takes. Fabric is anywhere between, if you bought it super sale, you're probably paying between $5 and $8 a yard for fabric. On regular pricing, it's up to $20 a yard for fabric. Backing can go over $20 a yard for extra wide backing fabric. Batting is around $10 a yard, depending on whether you buy extra wide and what brand you purchase. It can be a little bit less and a little bit more. You can wholesale it a bit by buying it in bulk, buying it. Sometimes you get a discount if you buy an entire bolt of 15 yards at a time, which is what I do. To have it always in stock in the studio. But now you're talking about 3 layers at those expenses. So for every square yard, you've already invested almost $30 per yard on average for that. A quilt might cost $200 or $300 just in supplies. And the layperson doesn't really factor that in. They can go to a box store or online and they can buy a quilted manufactured quilt for a couple of $100 if it's even, you know, in good quality, under 100 if it's not. So if it's a comforter or just a bed covering, you can get something for under 30 bucks if you are careful about how you shop. So these are really interesting factors that are built in before we add the time, the creativity, the development of the design, the actual figuring out what to quilt in each section of the quilt and how much time it takes to then bind it. If you do things by hand, like finishing binding by hand, there's the amount of time invested might be in excess of 10 hours to quilt one quilt. And if you were only making $10 an hour and it was 10 hours, I mean, you can see where the price is going up and up and up. And that's just $10 an hour. That's not even minimum wage. Let's say we gave you $20 because you're a skilled worker. If you put 10 hours in, that's $200 just for your time, $300, let's say, for the fabric. So you're at a $500 price point for a project that people can buy for under 50 bucks if they're careful. Not handmade, not special, but pre-manufactured if it's just for the practical purpose. So all these things factor in making it really hard to make a decent living as a specialty crafts person. So that was our interesting coffee chat. And now I'm going to let you watch some quilting. And I would love to hear what you think about this conversation in the comments below. Are you someone who sells your work? And how has that worked for you? Do you find it rewarding? Do you find it adequate in terms of payment? And I am still researching how to, I'm probably just going to sell directly on my website, but how to develop an online store platform for people to feel secure. A lot of people just trust me and send me money because they see me on television and they figure I'm probably honest. So, but if you were just someone that they didn't know that they liked your work, how would they trust you to be able to pay and feel like they were going to get the quilt in the mail, etc. So you get the idea. It's a pretty complicated subject matter. So let's just watch some quilting. Let's zen out with fabulous feathers. So this isn't going as smoothly as I had hoped. So much for Zen. Apparently, I made a mistake and recorded this on time lapse, which sped up the video by like 90%. And so I have slowed it down to the proper timing, but unless it renders perfectly, it looks like it's still a little bit bumpy. So hopefully you can see my process though. As you see, I've done the spine in advance, and then I have gone back to the beginning and I build a couple of inches on one side of the spine and then a couple of inches on the other side of the spine. And that keeps me from having to either travel all the way back down the spine and start over at the beginning, or break thread and go back. And this method is the most efficient, which is what I'm all about. But it is also a little bit freeing because you get to build these feathers as you go, make sure that they fit the area, bend and move to flow with the direction of the arc of the spine. Anyway, you get the idea. This whole quilt is beautiful feathers. Big giant bordello feathers in the polka dot outer green border. These cute little sort of just wiggly, wavy spine feathers in the sashing. And then a giant meandering feather design edge to edge in the center section. So in a future vlog, I will show you a little bit of how all the feathers turned out. In the meantime, this is my process for all of those who asked for a little bit more. We just love to watch just the free motion, and I hope it's not too bumpy once it renders. The other thing we haven't talked about is the price of equipment in terms of our subject matter and making things for a business at a living wage. Never mind the investment in equipment, and we'll talk about that in a later vlog. In the meantime, here is a little bit of feathery
free motion. And now I'm just tying off, bringing the bobbin thread to the top and cutting back.
Thank you so much for being a part of this chat, for being a part of my thoughts, philosophically and otherwise, about selling in the marketplace your art, and for joining me today at Drama Queen Bee Quilt Studio for a little feather long arming. So I hope you'll join me again. There's another vlog coming soon, and it's going to be a big round number. I think I'm almost to 20 vlog posts, and this is 19. So I will see you very shortly with our 20th, and thank you so much for being a part of my quilting journey. All the very best to you. Stay well, stay healthy, and stay happy. With all of my very best regards, this is Beth Maitland at the Drama Queen Bee Quilt Studio.